And we're live to review a pretty good episode of Homicide: Life on the Street. A little bit of a spoiler there. It's pretty good. So over to Jeff, and I'll put up the Jeff and our hopefully regular guest Bradley to comment on this episode.
All right. This is Homicide: Life on the Street, Season 7, Episode 11, entitled Bones of Contention. Written by Eric Overmyer and Jason Yoshimura, and directed by Brad Anderson, and originally aired January 15th, 1999. And I'm going to read a couple of brief descriptions of the episode and then let Ben have his say. So, Wikipedia says, Munch and Lewis investigate a set of female skeletal remains dug up at a construction site. Their investigation reveals that the woman was part of a gang of bank robbers active in the 1980s. And interviews with the two surviving members result in criminal charges against them both for her death. After G warns Falzone that he or Ballard will have to transfer to another shift if their relationship is serious, they decide to keep seeing each other in secret. Shepard returns to work but is put on desk duty, greatly frustrating her, and Lewis gives her a souvenir, the bullet-nicked hat he was wearing on the night she was beaten. And the TV.com version says, a body buried for 6 to 20 years is uncovered at a construction site. Munch and Lewis begin the process of trying to solve this old crime. Falzone and Ballard's relationship has heated up, and that fact becomes apparent to their fellow detectives. Shepard returns to work but is discouraged when G assigns her a desk duty. Gardy tells Billy Lou that he'll attend her bass playing concert. Munch and Lewis, with help from the ME and Mike Giardello, identify the body and begin to piece together what happened to her. G lays down the law to Ballard and Falzone. They have to knock it off if they want to stay working the same shift. They agree, but then they don't really agree. So, yeah, that's about the gist of it. Ben, what'd you think?
Right then. So I like the team up of Lewis and Munch. I think from my point of view, they're the two funniest characters. Or at least the characters I like the most. Lewis and Munch. And the Ballard and Falzone thing was like so. I mean, I like that actress that plays Ballard. I think she has a light touch, and I think she could have been good in a sitcom. And I liked a little bit on the backstory on Ballard about her. You know, she's got some Armenian ancestry. And if folks want to look up the Armenian genocide committed by the Turks, they'll find some more information out on Armenia. The most interesting thing about this episode came right at the end with Lewis's gift. And we've got that in the... I can actually go straight to the shots here, and you can see her reaction to it. She's given the hat with a bullet hole in it. And so it's like... Lewis seems to be sending her a message that, hey, I could have been killed here through your... you being my partner. So what do you think, Jeff? That I'll ask you what your thoughts are on like Lewis and the situation at the end, then we'll get Bradley's view on the episode. What do you think of that situation at the end with Lewis and Shepard?
It's hard for me to comment on it because I know like what happens later. So I will say that knowing what we know about Lewis, my thought is that if I try to ignore anything I know about future episodes, then it could just be a spontaneous act where he felt like doing that, and not that there was a particular message that he intended. You know, about that desire to make an impact.
Yeah.
So it's like an impactful thing, but not necessarily trying to achieve any particular thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like just sort of trying to, you know, like I said, make an impact. I don't know a better way to put it, but
I mean, I think we know he likes her, but it's like it's his personal safety was at stake, and so he's got like mixed feelings on the subject. And you saw how he brought it up in the in that good scene in the previous episode when when he gets upset in the hospital, and there's a sort of a recap where she actually says that to the other female detectives, where she brings up the fact that what the guys say about us, we're more likely to go to our gun because we're not as physically strong as the guys. And Lewis said something similar in previous episode. Now that completely ignores martial arts and stuff like that.
But of course, what I was thinking was, it's like, well, okay, but if you're going to go to the gun, you have to be prepared to use it. And that was the problem, is that the guy figured out really quickly she wasn't.
Yep.
So you don't necessarily, doing that in itself isn't necessarily the problem. It's just going to the gun, you got to be able to do that with confidence that you're convincing the guy that you're going to use it if you have to. And that was the problem. And anything with her being taller, like, she probably is more physically imposing than either of the other two female cops.
Yes.
Because of that. But she didn't try to use physical means either, so she came off really timid, and that was the problem.
Yeah, the actress might not have been happy with that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't remember ever seeing an interview with her or anything, so I don't really know much about her thoughts on any of that. But I think that the aftermath of that was more effective than the actual scenes at the time, because it's sort of, like I said, I think the writers did their best with sort of being forced into that situation, where it was sort of like, from a network point of view, we want these more attractive characters added to the show, but the writers were like, we're going to use these characters, but we're still going to make it true to our idea about how homicide should be. So I think they did a good job of that. And there's a lot of things I liked about this episode, and I agree with you about the ending, but also even right before that, I thought there was sort of a good 1-2 punch at the end, because you had the scene with the hat, but even before that, you had the ambiguity of the resolution about, like, the daughter, whether or not she knew about, she got the money from the bank robberies and stuff, and there was a whole nother, like, sort of chain of evidence there that they basically implied that they weren't going to really pursue.
Yeah.
And they show her looking from the window, and so I like that element. I like when you have those kind of ambiguous things where you're left, kind of wondering what the real story is, because we still don't know for sure. We have only testimony of 2 of the criminals involved, and we don't know for sure if either one of them's telling the truth.
This idea of selective enforcement of the law. I mean, I remember, slight digression here, folks, and that was when I heard recently on the radio that in the UK, the police aren't going to prosecute anyone for shoplifting if it's less than £500. And I'm thinking, don't announce that.
Yeah, that kind of is an invitation.
Yeah, the shoplifters will be totting up their bill.
Yeah. Well, I'm up to $4.99. Time to stop.
So you could actually say, I mean, if that happened in the United States, look, I'm walking out of here. You know how much.
Yeah.
If you call the
it'd be
cops.
great for the people who just steal alcohol.
Yeah.
They just walk into the liquor store and just take cases. Be like, see ya. I'm not going to be prosecuted.
I mean, all you got to do in that situation is just have it like a nightclub. Have bouncers. And if it works there, just be hard. But then again, they'd get sued. But they could. Anyhow, we won't get into that because that's not really relevant to the. But yeah, I mean, I can see the mixed feelings there from Lewis, and I don't know what else. Anyway, over to Bradley. Control D for Bradley's thoughts.
About the episode, or just about the end scene?
Everything that you would like that is episode related.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about the end scene first because it's like more in your mind, that's fine.
Right. And
Go from the start.
Connectivity. All right. So yeah, I mean, I was pretty unsure because they spent most of the episode inside her perspective and her thoughts about the situation. You know, she talked to him with the scene in the bathroom, and then the scene with Falzone, and then the scene with the women in the office, and then the very end scene with the hat. I think those are all the times she brought it up. Oh, and I guess the scene in the office with G too. So we basically spent the whole episode, you know, with her and her thoughts, and no one else's input really, except you know, people say, you know, there's not a problem, but of course she doesn't believe them because she has her own thoughts going on, and no one has really cleared the air yet. And had Lewis talked to her since the incident? Because
we don't know for sure. I mean, yes, he did briefly in the hospital at least, but they don't really know whether he, you know, has talked to her much since then or not.
Right.
They didn't show it.
Like I said, he's going to have mixed feelings. Like, he's going to be upset that his partner got beaten up like that, but he's also upset that, I think, and he actually brought it up, he's upset that she's in that position. Because I don't think he agrees with women being partners of men unless they, you know, they're big and tough, like, you know, Mahoney's sister. She'd be tough enough.
Yeah, right. So basically, what my impressions was obviously, you know, from her perspective, it's going to spin out of control for her because she has no idea. She already has her own fears about what people are thinking about her, and to be given something without any conversation and without any context, just a picture of a bullet hole in her mind.
Yeah,
that's obviously not going to go great for her, which was my first initial instinct was that that situation was a bit indelicate. But that's only because we spent the whole episode with her insecurities. So I'm not sure how it's going to play out, obviously, because I haven't seen any of the other episodes beyond this. So I do like it. It is very creative storytelling and a very compelling storytelling. So I enjoyed that. I also I think I really enjoyed the character and story progression in this episode, especially with Ballard and Falzone. I really liked their relationship. They both agreed to terminate it and then not terminate it at the very end. So you know, pretty much everyone could have seen that coming, but I still think they did a good job of you know, the politics of hey, you can't be showing off your relationship, otherwise, you know, someone's gonna have to do something, and then someone did something, and then they were forced to they're basically forced into a situation where they have to decide, you know, if they're going to continue seeing each other or not. And of course, you know, you can tell people one thing and then do another thing behind their backs, which is what they look like they're going to do. So, but I still think the entire sequence of those events were, you know, you could have predicted it, but it was still really satisfying to watch.
And it might have a little bit of clue because we're not really sure on Ballard's best fit type, but like, I like the fact that like she was like turned on by the fact that it's secret at the end when she mentioned that.
Yeah,
so maybe a little bit of SP tendencies there.
She came over to him.
Yeah,
and yeah.
Like I think she's really good. I think that actress is really good at like the little bits of like comedy and light touches that she can do. I just think that she would be really funny in a sitcom.
Oh, she's extremely funny. Have you seen her in any other shows?
No.
She's actually been in a few. She actually had her own show on American network. I think it was USA, called Necessary Roughness. And I think she had like a few seasons, 1 or 2 seasons, and she was the lead character.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's very talented.
Yeah, well, I pride myself on my ability to judge acting, so I was right.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely has a lot of range beyond what she's showing in in this, but that's a different thing. I also liked about the episode Munch, the the person who did the autopsy, the medical examiner. I liked his reaction to his sort of ungrateful attitude. Munch was like, so that's all you can tell us, and he was like, "What's with this guy?"
Yeah.
His initial reaction was it's always funny to see people's reaction to Munch, because he is I mean, he's an ENTP,
Yeah.
so for better or worse, he is gonna push people's buttons in certain ways, and some people are used to it, some people aren't, and the medical examiner wasn't. So that sort of knee-jerk reaction to instantly raising his voice and being like, "What do you want from me?" I think Munch is.
Then he lists a
Sorry?
bunch of other stuff to like sort of prove his his medal. I don't know if you want to.
Yes, because there's that thing where ENTP is intellectually competitive, and obviously he recognizes in the mortician, or I've forgotten what the medical examiner, that a rival intellect. There's a little bit of like banter there on that level, because Munch sees himself as an intellectual. But what type do you think the medical examiner is, Jeff? Or temperament?
You asked me that before, and I said that there's not a lot of to go on, but there is at least one episode before the season's out that features him a little bit more. But my guess is that he's probably another NTP of some sort.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Morgan? Okay. Okay.
There's a lot of rivalry between NTPs.
Yeah, that'd be my guess, just sort of based on how he comes off.
Right. So yeah, I really liked. I mean, Munch is. I mean, we kind of talked about it before, how he's played the characters crossed like universes, and he's played the different the characters in a bunch of different related and unrelated series.
Well, it means it's all the same universe, really. It's the Munch universe. And they are related programs, because it's like they're all like NBC programs, and it is sort of the same universe, I suppose. At least that would.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely are like obviously Homicide and Law and Order are directly the same universe. So, but yeah, I really like
Has anything,
Munch is,
Jeff? Jeff or Bradley? Has anything come up in Munch's subsequent appearances that have like contradicted things in this? So is it like a continuous?
Not that I know of, but I haven't watched most of his other.
Right.
Like I told you before, I've watched like one full
SVU.
episode of SVU and only like clips or whatever, and that's what he's in the most, other than Homicide. So
yeah, it's too much, that program, SVU. Come on, I mean, put him in something a little bit lighter.
Oh, I mean, I watch a lot of SVU, and if the acting wasn't so good, yeah, it's an incredibly heavy show. So I think it's pretty skillful the way it's acted so well that subject matters that should be unwatchable, they're able to make it into a very good show, I think. So like Mariska Hargitay is like incredible. So I think I'd watch that show just for her alone, because she's so compelling.
When we were doing the review on the Wanted Dead or Alive episodes, and I was talking about Chris Maloney and the difference between his character on Homicide versus the SVU detective, I'd forgotten, but then I saw an NYPD Blue episode and forgotten that he was on that. Also had a recurring character on that named Jimmy Leary, who was a straight up thug. So now recently I've seen him playing, a detective, a bounty hunter, and then just a gangster type. So like sort of three different areas, on the pendulum, and he's done a good job of all. So he's definitely convincing actor as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I realize that doesn't relate to this particular episode, but but anyway, I just thought of that when you were talking about.
He's the guy, folks, that I put in that thumbnail where it's like the women on the Miami beach, and then he's looking at them, and then it's Lewis. And then what I did is I flipped the image of Lewis to make it look like Lewis was looking at the image as well, looking at the women as well.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you, I really liked that that split screen image thing you did.
Thank you.
That was good.
All right. Well, I guess we better get back to the episode. Yeah. So yeah, I liked Munch, and yeah, the good thing about when characters are sort of benched or told to sit out for a while is that you get to see different dynamics and different people partner up. So yeah, it's always whenever Munch is with anyone, it's always good for me because I really like the character of Munch. And I don't want to say this without complaining. I don't know how to say this without complaining, but when there's so much SJ dominance, it's a different temperament is always welcomed in my eyes. Because otherwise, I mean, the SJs are all different people, but when when there's not enough contrast, I do definitely notice when one of the other temperaments come in. It's like, oh yeah. Yeah. So I mean, the contrast is sort of nice in that aspect.
Yeah, and I think there on the rare episode of Homicide, there's a few where you have an NF character that pops up. The same thing happens where they really sort of stand out, like this character is from a different universe in terms of the day-to-day operations of the police department. It's very NF hostile, I would say, for the most part. So
yeah, we had that with this little character called what was that little videotape guy called?
Brody.
Yeah, Brody.
We had Brody, and we had the reporter guy for the black newspaper that G was friends with that ended up getting killed, and a few other characters like the girl that Bayless and Lewis both fell for.
Oh yes, INFJ. Victim romance style. Kinky woman.
Didn't want to stay with Bayless because he wasn't rough enough with her.
Yeah. Yeah, because Bayless is more the caregiver, ISFJ protector, gentleman kind of guy.
Bayless did not appear in this episode.
Ooh. He lost an episode fee.
There's no explanation for where he was. I guess they just wanted to save some money. Not have him in it. He wasn't directing or anything. He just wasn't in it.
No point having him in the background and giving him $40,000 for that.
I mean, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I always like it when there is that you see the character, even if they're not necessarily intricate to the particular plot, And you see that a lot with soap operas where they obviously trying to save money these days with the low budgets, so they have characters that. Like, they sort of feature the same characters for, like, a couple of months at a time, and then all of a sudden they go back to some other characters, kind of like, oh, where have they been? It's because they were trying to only pay them for a certain period of time and not have to have them in scenes that they weren't going to be much to do with the plot.
I mean, if you're a regular on American television, you pretty much have won the lottery. You are going to be a millionaire if you're a regular in a series that does over 3 seasons.
Maybe so. I mean, I don't know much. I know that there's a minimum, so obviously you're going to make at least that. But as far as how all that works, I don't know. But
because
you're successful, but it's not like it used to be though. Because I mean, if you 80s and 90s, when there were so much fewer entertainment options, if you were on a network series in America, you were getting paid a lot more than somebody who was on like a cable show or something that was not as wide an audience. And now you can be on something on like Netflix or Hulu or something, and you're, potentially getting paid as much as somebody who's on like ABC or whatever. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm thinking mainly of something like Star Trek. you'd have people on there who like they never went on to do anything else, but they'd be paid a ton of money, like Garrett Wang.
Star Trek is kind of a special case, though. I wouldn't say it's the only one, but when you have something that becomes like a franchise, cult thing like that, especially, that's just, a lot more money has been made for other things than it was ever made for being in the television show originally.
Yeah. I mean, like, because you can have people in Star Trek who are not necessarily the best actors or actresses in the world, and they have a huge payday.
Sometimes you just get like, you make one deal for something that is, sets you up for life. Like,
oh yeah,
even if he wasn't already a successful recording artist, Paul Anka, by writing the theme song to The Tonight Show, he made more money off that than anything else.
Yep.
Because he got paid every single day that it was on television.
Wow.
For 30-something years or whatever,
Well, I just hope he just didn't buy US bonds with that money. Invested wisely. Mind you, SP probably wouldn't. Probably just spent it on wine, women, and song.
I don't know. Don't know much about Paul Anka personally, but I know that he made a good deal when he got that done.
Oh yeah.
He also wrote "My Way," which became, a really successful song covered by a bunch of people too. So,
when you say "My Way," I heard that originally it was based on a French song.
Could be. There's a lot of those songs that were based on even older things, like, I heard a recent Casey Kasem show. Well, the show wasn't that recent, but I recently heard it, is what I mean, where he was talking about the song "It's Now or Never" and how that came from the Italian song that is usually remembered as "O Sole Mio," even though that's not actually the title of it. But anyway, that melody was reused in a bunch of different songs. But, that was true in, like, the old days before you had all the publishing rights deals. You had old songs that nobody had the copyright ownership on it, so people would use those melodies or those things, and make money off it without having to pay anybody else.
And yet again in this, we get bit parts where the acting is better than the main leads in British soaps. I mean, the acting standard is usually very good in Homicide.
Yeah, this was another episode where I thought all the guest actors were very good. We got a reappearance by Detective Higby. We hadn't seen him in a while, but he's still in Missing Persons, asking them to get transferred back to Homicide.
That woman was okay as well. The mother, and also
she was okay. Seemed to fit all the characters. There wasn't anybody that stood out as not seeming like they fit the part in any way, for sure. I like the part where she said, like, I was just like her. I was hot and wild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I like that bit. And I also, when I looked at her, what do you think I was thinking, Jeff?
I don't know.
I was thinking, wonder what she looks like now.
Oh, okay.
Because this was 1999.
I thought you'd be more like, what, you wanted to see a picture of her back when she was younger.
No, she's pretty young there because she's the daughter, isn't she?
No, I thought you were talking about the mother.
Oh, no, not the mother. Right. That was an interesting reaction shot there from Foul Zone after the kiss in with Ballard. Could be interpreted various ways.
Yeah, and again, it's refreshing to me to get Bradley's perspective on this, having not, being like fresh to this, like this is, I hadn't seen very many episodes of Homicide, so this is like kind of, whereas again, it contrasts with what I was telling you about, like the old school alt TV Homicide group people who couldn't stand Foul Zone and thought this entire thing with him and Ballard was like nauseating the whole time. So it's great to have somebody's perspective where they say, I like the relationship, whatever, and seeing it from a different angle, because people were like that. They were so all over that as the they're turning Homicide into a stupid soap opera with these uninteresting couple or whatever, and So, you know, I'm somewhere in between in terms of my opinion of it. But it's fun to me just to get different perspectives on that. So
I think what happened was they covered Paul Falzone just maybe a little bit too much at the start of season 6, and that's when people got sick of him.
Yeah, and to what he said earlier about you know, just, you know, scenes being better with Munch in them, you know, and I agree with that, and that's why I've said several times that like I would have not featured the new characters as much as they did. I'd be fine with having them there, but, you know, I would have given Munch more to do and a little less Falzone, things like that, you know. And even Bayless, you know, Bayless got a fair amount of featuring, but, you know, I actually liked the team of Bayless and Munch, and I would have actually had a little bit more of that, because I think there was a potential for some of the same rapport that they had with Munch and Bolander, even though, you know, Bayless is not exactly the same, obviously, but there's a little bit, I kind of like that contrast with the, you know, the Guardian-Rational relationship, and as partners, it's kind of interesting to see. But, you know, the Munch-Lewis team-up was good, too. I like the way he always calls him Munchkin, so.
Yeah. And also with Bayless going a bit mystical, that could have had some good scenes with that getting on Munch's nerves.
Like I said, I think there was a little bit almost of a rivalry there, because Munch sort of had that attitude, like, I'm supposed to be the philosophical one. This guy's new to the party. You know, he's an amateur. I've been doing this for decades, you know.
I think the reason why the character of Munch has had like so much legs is that he's an ideas machine. And so as long as you can keep coming up with new ideas for him to, you know, articulate, then the character can continue.
Yeah, I agree. You know, he even got to do a Ronald Reagan impression in this episode.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, I also like Lewis's response to that, which is not now. And initially he was like, give it a break, and he's like, what, you don't want to talk about Reagan? And he's like, no, I just want to break from you.
Yeah. And also,
political.
He also did that thing where he wanted to compare the worth of a woman who was a prostitute and a bank robber with a guy who turned his life around. And it's like, don't be an ENTP. Like, don't go there. Munch. I don't want that.
Yeah, and that's, you know, a little bit of a contrast there between Lewis and Pimbleton when he was still around, because he probably would have engaged in that discussion, but he would have had this, you know, he had the strong opinion about how life is worth the same. So he would have, you know, said that it doesn't matter either way. It doesn't matter what her, you know, what she did in her life, you know, she deserved the same consideration.
Yeah, in fact, that might have set Pemberton off, and he would have liked being set off, because then he could have like a performance about it.
Yeah.
Especially if there was like a crowd. Say if it was in the squad room, and it was Munch.
Yeah, see, that's. I'm glad
Pemberton.
You understand that, and now, and you know, that's what I was talking about in that video we did with Emily, where I was saying it's hard to get across to some types of people that don't understand that, how sometimes like blowing up about something just feels good to have like a performance. It's not really because you're trying to be angry at someone or hurt someone's feelings or something. It's just sort of a rush to do that.
Yeah. To make a scene.
Yeah.
Oh, I also thought it was interesting. Talking about the penitentiary, how they changed it to a correctional facility.
That was a good detail.
Yeah. And it's like, so what, not supposed to be penitent anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah. Must be corrected.
Yeah, I thought this guy was believable.
Yeah.
And I thought he was good as well.
Yeah, I mean, he still had me fooled at the end. I mean, I honestly believed him when he was saying, when he was reluctant to respond to the questions, and then they brought up the screaming, and he was like, no, there was no screaming. He seemed legitimately traumatized. So, of course,
yeah,
that's
that was
not...
you know, another one of the cops are effective at bluffing someone in a way that gets them, you know, whereas you're thinking if this guy was really so good at hiding his involvement in this for all this time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they obviously they did good to hit they're trying to push buttons and they got his button, they got his number on there. Of course, that's not it's not saying it's not conclusive as to if he did it or not. But I believe the trauma as he was describing what happened.
Yeah, and he did like her. I mean, they were romantically involved, but that's what happened. But she was probably an ESFP.
But it was like, this was sort of an example of the same thing, except the guy went for it instead of using that to realize that they were bluffing him.
Jeff, your sound cut out a little bit. Did it cut out for you, Bradley?
No.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was just me. I'll stop the screen share. Might be more consistent.
Well, I was just talking about how there was a previous episode where somebody, I think it was Bayless, like went a little bit too far in bluffing a suspect, and then they just stopped talking. And in this episode, he actually did go for it and, responded like she didn't scream, rather than just, stopping and being like, okay, they don't know what they're making this up because I was there and there was no screaming. So, but I suppose he could have also thought that the Sykes dude made that up too. So, when he's trying to tell him, put it on him. So,
I mean, the only real difference from reality is like people would lawyer up a bit more in reality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the worst thing actually is the sort of hybrid that Law and Order does, where they have the lawyers there, but the cops are still like interrogating them, whereas no actual decent lawyer would allow that to happen.
Yeah.
They just say, nope, they're not talking to you anymore.
Especially if the lawyer thought that this guy's not dealing with a full deck, not the sharp snipe in the drawer.
Right. The worst I ever saw of that on Homicide was in the second crossover with Law and Order, where they had the married couple that the daughter had been, abused and murdered and stuff, and they had that whole thing where they're like putting pictures down of her, while the lawyer's there. I'm like, there's no way the lawyer would have let her sit through that. She had no reason to let her do that. But anyway, that's a different episode. But
yeah, I mean, that's one of these things where it's like in science fiction where you got aliens speaking English. It's just like there's a certain thing
that you can always cover for by saying there's some sort of translation device, though.
Yeah, that makes the alien move their lips in English.
Yeah. Well, that's where you gotta have an alien that their lips are not the same, so they're enough you can't tell what language they're speaking. Or speak telepathically.
They tend to speak English better than actual humans too. They tend to speak English very well when they do it.
Or at least when they get a bad actor and it's like has a recognizable accent. So it's like not only do they speak English, they like sound like they come from New Jersey.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you've seen plenty of this, Ben, where you have productions of like Shakespeare or something where it's like half the people trying to speak in an authentic accent and the other half aren't. It's like, why are you bothering? Yeah,
and that's exactly why they came up with the American theatre standard. Is they realised it was better just to do a like posh American theatrical voice than a bad British accent.
Right. But it's, I mean, though that's what I'm saying though. It's like if you're gonna do that, at least have everybody speaking bad British accents instead of like some of the people are trying to do that and other people are like, screw it, I'm just gonna speak in my voice.
What about
it just comes off really bad.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. You got Kevin Costner speaks in American. It's like his normal voice.
Right.
I was like, what is this? Some weird meta thing going on here? And then I think Mel Brooks did a spoof, and he said, "Oh, I'm different because I can speak in a realistic British accent," something like that.
Yeah, I guess that was advancing the conspiracy theory that Robin Hood actually came from the U.S.
His time machine.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, if Doctor Who can meet Shakespeare, then same thing, Anyway, overall, I thought there's a lot of things I liked about this episode. I like I said, I've enjoyed, Munch, so I like it being used more, and I'm not bothered by the Falzone Ballard stuff, but it didn't really interest me that much. It's just kind of a side story. And I did like some of the tension with Shepard and Lewis and some of the stuff, and that was all right. But so there's a lot of good things. It wasn't like a spectacular episode, but it was certainly enjoyable. So I'll give it about an 8 out of 10 for me.
That's what I give as well. What do you give, Bradley?
Oh, I actually, for me, it was I've only seen like a handful of these episodes, and for me, the contrast of people everyone seemed to be going through a sort of struggle. So it was definitely interesting to see a different side, because typically everything is normally rosy and peachy in terms of like that they're dealing with terrible things, but they're still on the up and up. And this time, a few characters were legitimately not okay with how things are going. So to me, that was I give it a 9 out of 10 because I get to see a new side of some of the characters, and it was noticeably different, and I enjoyed the contrast.
Cool. Well, I think there's some more of that in the next episode. We will see some more Munch. We'll see some more of those inter-office conflicts. And it's called The Same Coin. So join us next time for that.
Bye, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Stop now.